All right, hello everyone. I am Janie Sellers, here to welcome you. Not related to the mayor, although he is a fine fellow. Welcome, Charlie. And actually, speaking of the mayor and looking out at all the water in the pond over here, I have to take just a moment and say how happy we all are that the water problem got resolved quickly and fully. Very glad, despite all the bottled water that was available. It's nice to be back on city water again, or town water. I am the vice chairman of the Blowing Rock Civic Association, who together with the Blowing Rock Historical Society will be bringing you today's program. I'm standing in for our chairperson, Jean Kitchen, who had a family matter and was unable to be here to do this. You will see her though in the video that's coming up, so she will be with us at least on the silver screen as well as in spirit. You all, I hope, know about the Blowing Rock Civic Association. We are a group of community members, some full-time residents, some part-time residents, who are very much interested in the welfare and growth of this community and sharing information about it of all kinds, and trying to help facilitate communications between our town leaders and our citizens and other residents. So thank you all for being here. I would like to call on my fellow board member, Tom Barrett, who some of you have now seen as the voice of 28605 on our website. So Tom,
thank you, Janie.
Tell us a little about that.
First off, this is beyond expectations, guys. This is awesome. We've had to get more chairs out like 3 more times. So thank you so much for being here. And for those of you that will watch this later on 28605, we welcome you as you view. A little bit about 28605 and the birth and how that sort of got started. We looked at technology. We've been using technology for a couple of years with COVID in our company. And so we sort of took the things that we were using corporately and said, why don't we try to use this and create like a news channel for the Blowing Rock Civic Association. So that's what we did. So we've done probably 3 months now that we're trying to send out just current information in the community, what's going on. We try not to over communicate, but anytime you see a 28605, you know that's news about Blowing Rock that's coming out. And normally that's done from my office over on Green Hill. And we're hoping to maybe get a camera and do some on-location shoots a little bit later this fall. So that's in the works. But again, thank you for those that tuned in. We sent out a reminder yesterday. Obviously that works. So we're glad you're here. I also want to welcome our mayor, Mayor Sellers, to our meeting this afternoon. We appreciate his attendance. And then 2 things I'll say and I'll finish. My neighbors that are here probably watched me weed eat for about 3 hours this afternoon. And it's amazing, not only did we get water back the next day, so we got our water back, and I can't say enough about the water department and the phenomenal response they did in getting our water back on. And then we had, on Green Hill yesterday, we had 3.6 inches of rain. And before we got the stuff bagged for the folks to pick up, the truck was already there with the last stuff going in the bag. The town was there to pick the bags up, so they're gone and we're cleaning our neighborhood. So just a phenomenal response to two big issues with the town, and we just want to say thank you. So thank you to everyone for being here. Last reminder, and I'll go away. Our annual meeting is coming up on August the 4th, and it's at 5 o'clock at the car barn at Perry's Car Barn. Is that correct? And we're going to have parking at the Rumpel at the church, and we've got a shuttle that will shuttle you from their parking lot to the car barn, and that'll start at 4:30. So we look forward to seeing everybody on August 4th, 4:30 in the parking lot, 5 o'clock start for the meeting. Janie, thank you.
I will say one other thing I forgot to mention, but we do have the table in the back if you're interested in joining the association and aren't already a member. I have a nice letter from Jean and a form you can fill out. And we also have some voter registration forms for those of you who may be in a position to vote up here. And so with no further ado, let me call on Barry to tell us about our main program for today.
Thank you,
Barry
Janie.
Buxton.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Before I go any further, I want to recognize my cousin in the back of the room, who is our mayor, and I want us all to give him a round of applause for all he does. And by the way, he paid me for that political announcement. Thanks for coming today. It's great to see all of you. I had to bring my cheat sheet so I don't forget to recognize and say the things I wanted to share. So if you'll bear with me. First, I want to thank the members and the board of both the Blowing Rock Civic Association and the Blowing Rock Historical Society, because this is a joint effort and we're both working on this together. Thanks to our core production team, Douglas Myers, who has become a good friend of mine, and we've been through a lot of windy weather together, haven't we, Douglas? We've had to shoot multiple times because of Blowing Rock's wind and one thing and another. And Michael, who's behind the camera here, and Douglas's right-hand person. I also want to thank Tom Ross, who's in the back. Tom, thanks for helping me with my cheat sheets from time to time. And of course, Tom Barrett, who you've already met. Thanks to them as well. You know, I do want to mention that Tom O'Brien, who's president of the Historical Society, and I had a lot of fun together. We did the research for the photographs that you're going to see connected to this project. And in doing so, we scrolled through literally thousands of historic photographs about Blowing Rock. And for me, it was quite a journey. It was a trip back in time. And it was a trip filled with joy and sadness. It evoked every emotion I think that you can feel. But mainly, Tom and I had a lot of fun doing it. And as we scrolled through these hundreds and hundreds of photographs, we were scrolling through one block of photographs, and I said to Tom, I said, wait, stop, back up. That looked like my grandmother. And so Julian, so he backed up, and lo and behold, there is Granny, Minnie Robbins, my grandmother, and my sister Ann's, she was always partial to you, Ann, by the way. Why not, right? But anyway, there was Granny. I'd never seen that photograph before. So it was, you know, it's just one of the things that happens along the way when you engage in this kind of project, you know, which was a lot of fun. Another thing I wanted to share with you that I hope will kind of strike a chord of humor. So Douglas and I went out to shoot a couple of scenes that had been too windy in the first shoot, right, Douglas? Right. And so we went out last Saturday, I think it was, and we did a couple of shoots. And following that, I said, I'm going to run over to Earth Fair and get a few groceries. You know, I wanted to get some of their sourdough bread and some of their chicken salad and one thing and another. So, okay, I'm at the checkout, and there are two young ladies there that look like they're probably ASU students. And one of them said, why are you so dressed up? Are you working today? And I said, no, I'm retired. Now, okay, this is an indicator of the world we live in. I had on a white shirt and blue khaki pants, and she thought that I was dressed up, right? And so I started to just let it pass, and I said, instead of letting it pass, I said, no, I've been shooting a history video of Blowing Rock today, and was out shooting some scenes. And she said, oh. And by this time, it was not just her, but it was the checkout counter next to us. Everybody had stopped and was looking at us. And so she said, a history video. And I said, yeah. She said, that sounds really neat. She said, tell me one interesting thing about Blowing Rock that I don't know. Okay? She really put me on the spot. I thought, oh, okay, one interesting thing. Now what am I going to say? Because by then, not only were all the checkout people looking at me, but all these other people that were trying to get their groceries were looking at me. So I said, okay, our first mayor, Uncle Joe Clark, got drunk and stampeded a herd of cattle down Main Street. And everybody laughed, you know. And I thought, okay, that's a good thing for this audience to remember. If you buy the book and you have it on your coffee table and somebody says, what's happening with the Blowing Rock history? You can always throw out that one fact, and you know, they'll think you're an expert on Blowing Rock history. So anyway, it was kind of a fun thing to happen. Now, let's get around to business. What you are going to see today is 4 vignettes that are taken from a series of 8 different vignettes. Why these 4? Well, they're the 4 that Douglas and I finished in time for this program. That's the truth. I could have told you a whole bunch of things, but right, Douglas? I mean, we did wrap these 4 up. Now, would I say that they're absolutely final? Douglas would say yes. He hopes. I'm not sure that they're final, but we shall see. Now, another reason we just did 4 is we thought, you know, if the audience falls asleep, we sure don't want to try to show 8, right? So they might riot, and we wouldn't know what to do. So we chose 4, and if we should decide to do a second series, which we have talked about and considered, I'm going to focus that on what I call the queens of Blowing Rock. I have chosen 8 women who I feel have made extraordinary contributions to our community over time. And should we be happy with this first 8 and we decide to do a second, that's what the focus will be. And I'm kind of excited about that, actually. Our ultimate plan, as you heard from Tom Barrett, our technology wizard, is to have this on 28605, but also have it on YouTube, because you know and I know that's where all the kids are, right? They're on YouTube, so we would also have it featured on YouTube, and hopefully it would get out to a wide audience. Now, I also want to extend my gratitude to the Broyhill Family Foundation, because they stepped forward to print 500 copies of A Village Tapestry. Some of you bought copies, and thank you for doing that, bought copies of that this evening. I didn't bring enough with me. But they provided most of the funding to print these 500 hardback copies. So it's back in print, and it will be available on Amazon in a couple of days. The first 8 topics that I chose for this series: number 1, Main Street. You'll see that today. Number 2, it's about the equestrian life of Blowing Rock. You'll also see that today. Greystone and the Mebbins. You'll be seeing that today as well. And then the last one you'll see today is about Mayview Park. Now, the other 4 that we have substantially completed, right, Douglas? Tourism, Crown of the Blue Ridge, which is about the beauty of this place, the vistas, the flora, the fauna, blah, blah, blah. Cone Legacy, because all of you know how important the cones have been to this community. And then last but not least, the beautiful Chatola. So following the showing, I'll answer any of your questions that you may have. But without further ado, Douglas, let's get on with the show. What do you say?
Welcome to the rich history of Blowing Rock. Our host is Dr. Barry Buxton, who grew up here and shares his love for this beautiful village.
Welcome to beautiful Main Street in the village of Blowing Rock. Growing up as a young person here, this was where it was all happening. We would all congregate here in Memorial Park with all kinds of activities. Across the street was the famous Story Soda Shop where we would all hang out. And we had the theater, we had art galleries, we had so many things to do here. And you know, even today, I think it's fair to say there's something for everyone on Main Street in Blowing Rock. It is truly the heart and soul of our town. Is it any wonder that Southern Living magazine named Blowing Rock a best mountain town? and the nearby Blue Ridge Parkway a best scenic drive. Now that Blowing Rock has been featured on the cover of our state magazine, with 13 full pages singing our praises, more people are sure to want to visit. Let's face it, Blowing Rock's Main Street is now on the must-see list for everyone visiting the high country. You know, there's something for everybody on Main Street. Children playing in Memorial Park, merchants engaging in trade, restaurants serving delicious food, art and history museums, places of worship, seasonal cottages, and of course the coming and going of residents and tourists. And let's not forget the beautiful flower gardens. You know, it's a place of charm, of course beauty, social engagement, and let's not forget the important history of Main Street. And of course, as we scroll forward to today, we have many special events like Art in the Park and Farmers Market that attract people from not just Blowing Rock, but the surrounding community. But, you know, it hasn't always been this way. Before the turn of the century, Main Street Blowing Rock was unregulated, extremely primitive. It was a muddy dirt road, flanked by wooden shacks, hog pens, cattle, horses, chickens everywhere, and of course the hordes of flies that are drawn to that kind of animal. Our first mayor, Uncle Joe Clark, was quite a character. After having a few too many drinks, he actually stampeded a herd of cattle down Main Street. Thankfully, no one was injured, and after he sobered up, he called the mayor's court into session and convicted himself of drunk and disorderly conduct. He fined himself $1 in court costs, and all was forgiven. The Great Fire of 1923 destroyed most of the structures on the east side of Main Street. This was really a blessing in disguise because it led to an era of modernization and a safer, cleaner, more beautiful Main Street. But you know, Main Street was also the site of one of the most divisive events in our town history. In 1924, over the strident opposition of many residents, a decision was made to widen Main Street. 50 years earlier, beautiful maple trees had been planted on both sides of the road by town leader William Morris. These trees provided shade and beauty and contributed to the quaintness of Main Street. As you can imagine, in the autumn, Main Street was ablaze with color. Ultimately, the maple trees were sacrificed to meet the needs of the new king of the road, the automobile. But you know, through all the years, through the ups and downs, the Great Fire, the many changes that have evolved in our community, people of all walks of life still seem to flock to Main Street. And you know, I think they do it because the vibe is just so delightful. Blowing Rock has always had a love affair with horses. They are such soulful creatures. Like Casino here, my dear buddy. They steal our hearts every time. As a matter of fact, the first equestrian competition was held on Green Hill Circle in 1897. In those early years, it was called the Tournament at Green Park, and it was largely a social event with area riders. The judges, who were all men, were alleged to be partial to pretty girls, regardless of their riding skills. So the prettiest girls generally rode home bedecked in blue ribbons. Horses and their riders would even parade down Main Street through the village, to the absolute delight of kids and adults also. The Blowing Rock Charity Horse Show, which began in 1923 under the direction of founder Lloyd M. Tate, has grown steadily, and now it attracts equestrians from throughout the Southeast and beyond. In 1928, the horse show was moved to its current beautiful location, the bucolic Broad Hill Equestrian Preserve in Mayview. You know, this is a place of true distinction because the Blowing Rock Charity Horse Show is the longest continuously running horse show in the entire United States. It has been honored as one of only 20 heritage horse shows in America. It was recently voted one of America's top 10 horse shows, and also as the newest addition to the National Show Hunter Hall of Fame. The peak of the summer social season has always been the horse show, with its parties and pageantry. Here, the glories of Blowing Rock before air conditioning can be recaptured. For many years, the Blowing Rock Fashion Show was held in connection with the horse show at the beautiful and exclusive Mayview Manor Hotel. This charity event attracted Blowing Rock's social elite and raised funds for many worthy causes, including the Blowing Rock Hospital. You know, this special relationship between horses and Blowing Rock, it dates back before the turn of the century. Today, the economic impact of the horse show is over $7 million annually in a small town like Blowing Rock. Competitors, owners, staff, they come, they rent accommodations, they eat in our community, and they spend a lot of money here. Good luck, by the way, going out to dinner during the horse show, because reservations are impossible. This is the fascinating saga of Graystone Towers. So many amazing twists and turns connected to this property. It's like a soap opera. Folks, you cannot make this kind of thing up. It is truly a story of Blowing Rock and some of the amazing people who lived here and built homes here. Greystone, inside these gates, Graystone Towers was built in the 1920s. By Robert and Myra Mebbins. The Mebbins purchased 42 acres from Walter Alexander on Pinnacle Crest, Mayview Park's highest peak. After hiring an architect from Boston, they spent $250,000, a huge amount in those days, to build Myra's dream home, Graystone Towers. The German Gothic-style castle provided much-needed work for local builders, contractors, and engineers. And a winding gravel road beneath a labyrinth of trees led to the stone and chestnut bark structure. The beauty of the extensive grounds, a section of which was terraced with native stone walls and planted with colorful flowers, reflected Myra's desire to have a very special estate. Her impeccable taste was also on full display in the interior design of Greystone. Greystone's fortress front jutted and scowled off the cliff edge towards Grandfather Mountain, and the construction workers jokingly commented to one another, "Enough to wake old Grandpa, ain't it?" And the story of the Mebbins is one of social elite they were among Blowing Rock's most prominent couples in both the 1920s and the 1930s. They had money, they had prestige, they had good taste, power, and relationships in high places. They were the quintessential Blowing Rock power couple of that era. Remember, I mentioned that this is like a soap opera. Myra was originally engaged to Robert's son, Robert Jr. One time, Robert Jr. brought Myra home to meet his father. Well, sparks flew. Cupid was on hand. And when Robert Jr. traveled to Europe, leaving Myra here, Robert Sr. proposed to Myra, and they married. Robert, who was a native of Greensboro, was president of Republic Cotton Mills and later served as secretary of the United States Chamber of Commerce. Now, Myra was much younger, of course, than Robert, but she was attracted to him because of his influence, his power, and his wealth. Myra was also a multi-talented individual in her own right. She was one of America's foremost interior designers. She designed resorts for the rich and famous. And many of the families in America, you know the names, these were the Firestones and the Whitleys and the DuPonts. And I could go on and on with the number of people that she worked with. She was incredible in terms of her taste. But Myra was also a crack riflewoman, trained by the famous Annie Oakley at the nearby Mayview Gun and Rod Club. She was among the first women to hunt big game in Alaska. This was the site of many, many opulent parties. And to support their lifestyle, the Mebbins employed 2 cooks, 2 housekeepers, 2 of the groundskeepers, and also a chauffeur. Robert played high-stakes poker in the 3rd floor turret room with well-known men of the era, including J.P. Duke and Governor Cameron Morrison. By the way, only men were allowed on the 3rd floor. Because the gambling stakes were so high, a bank vault was installed on the floor beneath the turret. The turret had a stone fireplace and large picture windows, which offered a magnificent 360-degree view of Grandfather Mountain and the surrounding countryside. After Robert's death, Myra sold the estate to a Charlotte-based holding company. Thomas Shelton was the president of the holding company, and he actually lived in Greystone. To locals, Shelton was quite an eccentric. He kept to himself, and he liked to walk barefoot in the snow and ice. You know, the Mebbins gave Blowing Rock and local people a vision of what the super rich lifestyle was like. For example, Robert brought one of the very first automobiles to Blowing Rock. And not to be outdone, Myra bought the very first self-playing electric baby grand piano. She was also a showwoman. She had a beautiful show horse, a sorrel, 5-gated, high-stepping horse that she would ride in events in the community. Theirs was very much an Epicurean lifestyle. Live for the moment, live for pleasure. And they certainly lived for the good life. You know, it was a lifestyle that Blowing Rock had not seen before, nor has Blowing Rock seen since the Mebbins. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the incredible story of Graystone Towers. You know, the arrival of charlatan Walter Alexander in Blowing Rock in 1917 marked the beginning of a dynamic era in the evolution of our town. Before Alexander, there were two primary residential areas. One, of course, was the village that we all know and love. The other was Green Park to the east. Green Park at one time was its own separate community with its own post office.
Walter Alexander believed there was only one way to do things, and that was first class. In 1920, Alexander published a beautifully illustrated promotional travel log featuring Mayview Park and Blowing Rock. This publication, which was entitled In Cloudland, rivaled anything produced in America at the time and was exceptional in capturing the feeling and the spirit of Mayview Park. His brilliant promotional strategies brought Blowing Rock to the attention of thousands of prominent families and contributed to the town's growing reputation as a seasonal mecca. Mayview Park was designed to be the finest resort in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The original tract of land was 600 acres of splendid virgin timber. Alexander personally supervised much of the road construction to protect large rock formations, towering chestnut trees, and panoramic overlooks.
But you know, with the arrival of Alexander, in less than a decade, he would transform Blowing Rock forever, expanding it to the west and establishing Mayview Park. Mayview Park was intended to be the premier residential community in the southeast and all of the southern highlands. And that's because Alexander knew only one way to do things, and that was absolutely first class. He was a genius, both in the development of property, but also in its promotion. He was a visionary who was an environmentalist before the name became popular. His vision for this place was not only to beautify, but to protect. And that's evident today as I sit here on this stone wall that dates all the way back to the Alexander era. He built cottages here of chestnut bark, which was a beautiful building material that is long since gone. Now, if you travel around Blowing Rock, you can still find some of those chestnut bark homes, but they're few and far between. I was very blessed to grow up in one of those chestnut bark homes just a stone's throw away from where I'm sitting today. It was above the Antlers, and today you may know of that as the Bistro Roca restaurant. It was a special place to live, a beautiful place to live.
Resort recreational amenities included clay court tennis, golf at the Norwood Golf Course, trout fishing, hiking, horseback riding, hunting, and swimming. In 1923, Alexander founded the Mayview Gun and Rod Club, which had 100 charter members who each paid an initiation fee of $500. The club was managed by the world-famous sharpshooter and Wild West cowgirl, Annie Oakley. Of course, the crown stone was the splendid Mayview Manor Hotel, constructed to promote tourism on a grand scale. Alexander hoped to make Blowing Rock America's Switzerland. The main dining room of the hotel accommodated more than 200 guests and was the scene of many elegant dances. Alexander recruited large conventions to Mayview Manor Hotel, including the North Carolina Press Association and the North Carolina Bar Association. His goal was to bring movers and shakers in business, industry, government, and Hollywood to Blowing Rock. Through the 1950s, Mayview was more than just a hotel. It was a way of life. It stood for gracious living. White linen suits and straw hats, tennis dates and afternoon tea on the veranda, fresh flowers and white-gloved bellmen, horse show breakfasts and centerpieces of sculptured ice, ballroom dances and fashion shows, wicker chairs and stone fireplaces, old friends, and balconies with a view. It was a grand era in the life of our town. Then, abruptly, the dream came to an end. Alexander's sudden and unexpected death at Hotel Charlotte in the fall of 1925 left the entire Blowing Rock community shocked. By November, the Mayview Manor Company and all of its great plans were placed in the hands of receivers as a result of a lawsuit filed by the estate's creditors. It was also home to the rich and famous. They were drawn here because of Walter Alexander and his vision, but they were also drawn here because of the beauty of this place. It drew people like the Cannons, the Reynolds, and the Royals, many of whom still live here to this very day. Mayview Park was a glorious legacy to the Walter Alexander story and Mayview Park and Blowing Rock.
Much of the history that Barry shared with us is from his award-winning book, A Village Tapestry. If you'd like to continue this journey of learning about the history of Blowing Rock, please consider purchasing this book. All of the proceeds from it are given to the Blowing Rock Historical Society.
Are there any particular questions that I might answer? Yes, sir.
Greystone today.
Greystone today? What about Greystone today?
Occupied.
It's occupied by the Graham family, and they are doing a beautiful job of maintaining the beauty and increasing the beauty of the place. And one of the things I failed to mention in the video was that all of the staff back in the Mebbins area actually lived there on the estate, which was extraordinary, but it's still a beautiful part of Blowing Rock and always will be. Yes, ma'am.
What happened to the Manor Hotel? You said in the video it went into receivership.
The hotel?
Yeah, after the guy died.
The hotel went through many iterations and ultimately burned. It was made of old chestnut bark, which was quite flammable, and it burned one winter, and we lost the hotel. It was a very grand place back during its era.
What year did it burn? What year did it burn?
Does anyone remember that exact date? I'd have to look it up. I wouldn't want to give you the wrong date. Yes, ma'am.
Where was that gun club?
It was there at Mayview Manor Hotel, based out of there.
And what's there now in place of the hotel?
We have some beautiful condominiums that are located where the hotel was, and the old water tower that was above that was right behind the stone wall where I was sitting. That's now gone. But back in the day, we young people were always challenged to climb up that water tower as a rite of initiation, and up the top of it, the ladder actually leaned backwards, so it was quite a scary experience for we kids. Yes, sir. Mike.
The equestrian area behind the Green Park Inn, I kind of know what the topography is there.
Yeah.
What they actually have.
Well, the events were up on the circle, Mike, up above where you live. Yeah, up on the very top. Yeah, that's right. That was a flat piece of land, you know, and so that's where those were held. Yes, ma'am.
Didn't Mr. Gilliland buy that property in the 80s?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, that's right.
Because I got some things out of there. His son lives here,
Yeah.
George.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Did Annie Oakley stay always at the Mayview?
When she stayed at the Mayview when she was present during that period of time. And you know, the Mayview was, it's interesting today because my wife Lynn in the back of the room, she's on the board at the country club. And one of the challenges we face today is how do we accommodate the workers at these various places? You know, it's one thing, we don't pay a lot of money, do we, for a lot of the service personnel. Mayview had a dormitory back in those days for the workers. And of course, we all remember that. And that was kind of ahead of its time, if you will, in terms of the environment that we deal with today. Yes.
There's one other flat place associated with that hotel is where the tennis courts used to be. Because we
You mean
lived-
you mean Mayview?
Yes.
Yes,
we
yes,
lived
yes.
in the, where there are several townhouses.
That's right.
And kind of a.
That's where the old tennis courts were
Right,
located.
Right,
That's
it's
right.
that's called, what was it called, David? Mayview Center Court is the name of
Mayview
that
Center
little
Court.
development. That's kind of fun.
Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate so much your attention to the video. We'll continue to try to fine tune it. Yes, yes.
Everybody here appreciates what you've done.
Well, thank you.
Today and the rest of our lives, somebody can go back, and I think he deserves a huge credit.
All right. Thank you, dear Betsy. That's so
And
sweet
I'm
of
not
you.
on the program.
Thank you.
No, well, thank you
Thank you,
very
Jane.
much.
Thank you.
Douglas, Mr. Cameraman, this has been great. Don't forget, if you'd like to join up, the forms are in the back as our voter registration forms. Thank you.